Hey, I had a few thoughts I wanted to share about this topic that comes up all the time. It's a word that actually makes a lot of fitness people cringe, and that word is toning, quote unquote. Um, it gets talked about a lot, and for years and years and years, it's persisted in the fitness world or in our society and our culture. This idea of toning up, but it's always used kind of vaguely. And honestly, the reason that many people like myself and other people that work in the fitness or exercise world cringe when we hear this word, it's not the fault of the people saying it normally. You know, people that we take as clients, or just the average Joe or Jane on the street. I think it's more that we have failed, at least in my opinion, it's that we have failed as professionals to educate people on some of these topics. So myths tend to persist. So in my small way, I like to dispel those if I can. Many other professionals, people much brighter and more successful than I'll ever be, have covered this topic. But for those of you out in cyberspace who might stumble across this, or the few of you in my network who might be interested, I wanted to give just my thoughts in case you might be curious. So this idea of toning it's used kind of vaguely. Normally people are just sort of referring to a general tightening up of an area, right? Which is great, but it's not specific enough, because there are certain mechanisms that are responsible for the way we appear, the way our body appears, and how muscles look through the skin. And we have to appreciate what those factors are in order to know what we can or cannot change, and thus how to move forward with whatever our plan is, with exercise, with nutrition, or both. So, at least in my mind, there are three major contributing factors to how something looks in terms of tone. And I'll try to address each of those briefly. The first is just skin, right? As we get older, or after we're gaining or losing a whole lot of weight, those major fluctuations that occur, we may end up with skin that's a little looser, that doesn't maintain its elasticity over time. Anybody that's gone through a really massive weight loss probably has experienced this, where the skin just hangs differently. It's not as tight around what's underneath. And as far as I know, there are no exercises that can address this. What happens is kind of what happens. Some people genetically seem to have a better or more resilient collagen structure in their skin, perhaps, and I'm not an expert on skin elasticity, so don't expect a whole lot from me in this particular area. But from what I've seen and what I understand, there's not a whole lot that can be done. If you're genetically lucky, that's great. That you may respond better than if you lose a lot of weight, or over time you may not have as many wrinkles and whatnot. But to me, it seems like that's largely a genetic thing. So there's not a whole lot we can do about that in terms of exercise or nutrition, beyond just getting sufficient nutrition in general for skin health. Some people don't have very good skin. Some people are more prone to stretch marks and wrinkles. I'm one of these people, actually, at least with respect to stretch marks. I don't know if it'll show up in the video here, but I have a few these little guys here, and I've had them since I was 15. The cause was just being alive, as far as I can tell. Just genetically, I have a few. And that's okay. But anyway, with skin, we can't affect it a whole lot. The next thing up is fat, right? Now, this is something we can affect. All things being equal, if you lose fat in a particular area, you're going to appear more toned. Things are going to tighten up. The muscles underneath will become more visible. And generally speaking, for the most part, people would say that the shape improves. Now, the important thing, and this gets covered by just about anybody that knows anything about fitness, you can't spot reduce fat, at least not in any appreciable way that's been reproduced outside of a petri dish. Okay, you can't do it. So when you start getting into a calorie deficit, where you're burning more calories than you're taking in, when your body starts losing fat, it's going to lose it wherever it wants to. Generally speaking, it seems to be more from the extremities in. So arms and legs first, and then kind of coming in towards the midsection, though there seems to be variation from one person to another. So that's not a hard, fast rule either. But as you lose fat, it's just going to kind of go away wherever it goes away. So let's say you're trying to get abdominal fat to go away. You just got to keep losing fat until that area kind of comes up on the list and your body goes, okay, time to cut it from the abs. Now, realistically, your body might be losing it all over at the same time, but the point is you're just going to have to wait kind of until it gets to that point where that particular area starts to develop the way you want. Doing a ton of crunches is not going to do a whole lot for your abs in terms of reducing fat, right? Now, there are certain exercises that can address muscle, and that's actually my third point. But the point about fat is you can't be picky about where it comes off from, right? It's just going to come off where it does, and you just have to keep whittling away at it until you lose enough to look the way you want to, assuming that you can, right? Because sometimes we think we're going to look a certain way when we lose fat, and then we end up looking a little different. But that's another discussion. So yeah, the third thing, right, is muscle. So all things being equal, you can also change the appearance of a particular area of your body by changing the amount of muscle mass there. Normally, my recommendation is to gain it. I haven't encountered too many situations where losing muscle was what a person wanted to do, okay? Even people, and this is often a thing with women, they think, oh, I don't want to get too bulky, I don't want to put on muscle. Most of them that I've seen, if they can break through that wall and just put on a little bit of muscle, find out they actually start looking better. The contour of a muscle, if it's a little bit bigger underneath a given amount of fat, well, it's going to look a little bit better, generally speaking, from my experience. You're going to see, more of it in the sense that there's more volume underneath this cushion. If you imagine the fat as a comforter or something, or as a thick blanket, the more stuff you have underneath it, potentially, the easier it is to kind of discern the shape of what's underneath it, right? You still would want to bring fat into the mix in terms of losing some fat to really gain definition, but gaining muscle as well can contribute to that, absolutely. Brett Contreras has done a number of write-ups and pieces on testimonials of his clients regarding reshaping their glutes, where it wasn't a massive fat loss that contributed, it was really gaining muscle strategically in the hamstrings and in the glutes in that area to reshape their butt, right? Now, you're not going to change where muscles attach, but in increasing the mass or the volume, both, of the muscle that's there, you can indeed change the way the area looks. So those are the three things that really come into play when you're talking about toning or tightening up an area. You've got skin, which you can't really do much about unless you're going to go into surgery. And people that have massive weight losses, you've lost 100, 150 or more pounds, you may have significant amounts of loose skin, and you may elect to get something done about that surgically. And I think that's your prerogative. But in terms of fitness and nutrition, that's not an option. That's not something that we can do. So it's kind of a moot point. So we can't, in terms of exercise, do anything about how much loose skin you've got, or nutrition, same thing. But fat and muscle we can affect. We can lose fat to reduce the perceived softness in an area, and that can do wonderful things for definition. That's normally the main thing that reveals muscles and helps to reveal the contours of a particular area of the body. And we can, as I said in my third point, increase muscle mass. Now, we're not talking about taking a lady who's 100 pounds dripping wet and then making her 200 pounds and where she has traps out to here or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. But a few pounds gained strategically in the right way can really make a big difference in the way you appear, and also incidentally can make big changes in terms of how you feel and how you function. So there are those benefits as well. So anyway, that's my little bit about toning. I just wanted to talk about that for a minute because it comes up a lot. And my point with all of this is to implore anybody who watches this to think about what it is they're actually trying to do, okay? Take a look at that, at that part of the body and what's really going on, right? As a final example, and maybe I can do this, right? If I hold my arm out here, there's a certain amount of the tissue in my arm is bone, some of it is muscle, some of it is fat. And of course there's skin on the surface. It's important to know what's happening here, okay? So if I just kind of shake it around, or if I just kind of push this mass around in my arm, it jiggles around, it shakes a little bit, right? But how much of that is fat, how much is muscle, and whatever? Well, if I tighten it up a little bit, so I'm actually, you can't see really well, but I'm contracting my tricep here to tighten it up. Now if I push on it, a little bit of it moves, but a lot less than before, right? I can shake a little bit around, but it's not like what was happening when I was just loose and relaxed. So the stuff that's not moving, well, that's muscle. There is some fat here, but not nearly as much as there appeared. So it's important to realize that some of the soft stuff is just relaxed muscle, some of it is fat, and that's going to play into your appearance, right? So check yourself out and see how much seems to be what. And then from there, maybe you can start moving forward and deciding on what you want to do with your fitness. Do you want to lose some fat? Do you want to gain some muscle? Perhaps both. See what that does for you. So hopefully this addressed a few things. Maybe it didn't, but I was hoping maybe you got something out of it. And so that's it. That's Tony. More to come. Thanks.